Hi, this is Jason Gibson, and we're back with ServiceSharp. I'm here with Randy Haas, all around guru and leadership coach. Randy?
Yeah, so welcome back. It's been a little bit since we had one. Apologize for that, but life gets busy and everything. We've all been traveling some, but excited to bring another episode. I do want to say that we're not affiliated with ServiceNow officially in any way. So, this is just our opinions, but most of the time they're right. So,
That's right. There you go. Well, and we're going to be talking about what is required to be successful with ServiceNow. This is a series of 3 separate podcasts that we're going to be doing. The first one, we're going to be talking about vision and leadership. These are 2 really important things in ServiceNow, and I think it's doing these things that we are going to discuss in this series are really important to get right. So without further delay, I guess let's start with vision.
Okay.
Randy?
Yeah, I think that, the first one that we talk about is probably really just fundamental to any project anywhere, not just ServiceNow. But since this is a ServiceNow project, we're going to be talking about it in the context of ServiceNow. But one of the most important things, for any project is to have a vision of, a direction. Where do you want to go? You've got to have an endpoint, goalpost in mind in order to score.
Yeah, right. I mean, why ServiceNow, right? I mean, you just spent a bunch of money to buy ServiceNow. You need to kind of have an idea of why you bought it and where you want to go, right?
Right. And there could be, a few different reasons people have purchased ServiceNow because of how big it is now. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of companies get into it initially around help desk and service desk.
Right. Yeah.
And they moved kind of into other areas of IT operations management or IT service management, including change and problem and things like that. But it could be that companies are purchasing it now for the HR module or for the project module.
Right. Yeah. I mean, which are all great reasons. We love, anybody, no matter what they're doing in ServiceNow. We love you. We want you to be successful. I will tell you though, in my opinion, I think a lot of people start with the ITSM stuff, with the service desk stuff, and they don't have that why or that vision past that. They stop there, and I think it seems very short-sighted, and so I kind of see a lot of people falling into that kind of bad place, Yeah,
I think that I've seen a lot of companies where we go in and they have a hodgepodge of systems put together that ServiceNow could support a lot of the different systems. And for whatever reason, maybe it's they're entrenched in the other systems, or maybe it's they didn't have a good vendor that was confident enough to go in and build the product for them, or they were told, hey, it's not possible. Or it's possible that that they had ServiceNow before ServiceNow had it as a native feature, because one thing we talk about all the time is that they do a major release every so often, or every 6 months, and so new features come out all the time. And if you're not kind of refreshing your vision, I would say, then you may be missing out on some savings, on some efficiency.
Yeah, and I think, what's really important is, get started with a roadmap. Get a good quality, start with what you're currently doing and start talking about vision, which leads us to the next thing. We talk about the vision, but the vision has to come from leadership. It has to come from a commitment from the CIO down, from whoever your top technology leader is. Because if you don't have that, you're going to get a short-sighted vision, and if they don't understand what ServiceNow is capable of or does, then that's another problem I see happen. The CEO or the executives, they don't even understand what ServiceNow is. They start with, oh, well, we bought this because some other company we know has this, and they use it for their service desk. but they don't have any idea what the additional capabilities are or why they even have it, right?
Right. Well, and I got to give them credit. ServiceNow is hard to explain, I think, to people because it is so big. I mean, you can't just say, people ask you what's Exchange or Office 365, and Exchange you can easily say, well, it's email, and SharePoint's collaboration and file sharing. Although SharePoint's a little bit harder to define, Office 365 is a little bit harder to define. But you can either, there's really two main purposes for Office 365. People get into it, and that's email and for the apps, for the Office applications. Where ServiceNow is huge, and there's a lot of stuff, and not only is there a lot of stuff that they deliver, but it has the framework behind it where you can build whatever you want really within it. And so I give them a little bit of credit when they don't know what it is, but that doesn't excuse needing to dig in and finding out what it's capable of, especially as part of a periodic technology review. I think one thing that every company should be doing all the time is a periodic technology review where you go through and you check to see, do we still need all these software pieces that we're running, or is there a way for us to consolidate down? Because anytime you can consolidate down, you reduce the amount of money you're going to spend on licensing for these products. You reduce the overhead, you reduce the support needed, and you free up your people to be able to do better things than what you have. I mean, because I think what's ideal is not to just support the software that you have, but to be able to take advantage of the software you have, be able to take full advantage of it. So we're not just answering help desk calls and we're not logging tickets, but we're managing problems. So we're not seeing the same thing happen over and over. We're implementing effective change control so that we're not taking the system down at a critical time, or we're not having two changes collide with each other that causes a catastrophic failure. That we're doing our reviews and documenting things, that we're managing our assets and things aren't just walking out the door and we're not noticing it, or licenses aren't running out and we don't have a clue that that's happening. Right. No one wants to be audited. So all of these things that you can kind of do, I think it's important to develop that goal, that vision, and then periodically revisit it.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I see people do a lot is, we have, they don't understand the exponential value of things. So yes, it's important to do CMDB, right? We got to know what we have, what we own, right? We got to know how many servers we've got. We got to know those pieces of information. But what they don't understand is exponential. The additional value it's exponential when you're talking about, okay, now we've got that in there, so now we have that piece in there, and we can tie it to these incidents or changes, or we can tie it over to these problems or this incident. So there is an exponential effect every time something is put in ServiceNow that people just they don't really understand. It's like, well, I can grab that information. I was asked to do something the other day. It was kind of funny. One of my clients says to me, hey, I want to do this. And I said, well, you have to own, in order to get that done, you have to own ITOM. They said, well, I want to be able to show this dashboard that shows all the systems and whether they're up and down. I said, well, wait a second. That's, this is something that comes with ITOM. And they said, no, we don't want to buy ITOM. We just want you to build it. And I said, well, but I don't have the data. The data comes from discovery. The data comes from bringing in the data. If I don't have the data, I can't build it.
Right.
But it comes back to not understanding what you have and what the potential to move forward is. You want things. That's great, but let's look at what we have and where we want to go and build a really good roadmap to get there, and not try and, how many times we see people build custom stuff when they should not be doing that, right? And then the opposite side of that, they put something somewhere else when they could reduce their dev time by 30, 40, 50, 60%. I mean, to build it in ServiceNow. So, there's a balance, and you have to understand ServiceNow in order to know where that balance is.
Well, I think it's important that for that reason, it's important that you engage with someone. If you don't have the knowledge in-house, engage with someone that knows ServiceNow, knows what all the modules are capable of, knows how things interact, and can see these things up front and say, this is a waste of time to go down this path because it's built in right here on this path. And also to engage with your sales reps, and ask them questions. I mean, really dig in when you're talking to the sales rep about, what does this license mean? What does this license mean? What does this capability mean? Why do I need this? Don't be afraid to dig in, and they're going to hate me for saying this, but to dig in and get really informed about what you want. And
yeah.
The other thing I want to say is that, a roadmap is it's not a wish list. If I go out and I say, I want to see the Washington Monument, and I want to see the Statue of Liberty, and I want to see the Golden Gate Bridge, right? That's a wish list, right? A roadmap is, I'm going to get on the road and I'm going to drive to San Francisco, and then I'm going to turn around and go all the way back across the country. Wait, that's inefficient. Why don't I start on the East Coast, and then work my way back, and then let me look at the map and see what other destinations I'm going to go by along the way. Maybe,
right.
And that's the difference between a wish list and a roadmap. So oftentimes I see IT people sit down and executives sit down and say, here's our roadmap, and it's a wish list. It's not a roadmap. It's just, right, yeah. We would like to have these things, not we need to have this because it enables this, because it enables this, because it enables this, which is kind of
right.
That's what a roadmap is. You got to take functionality to have, and then figure out what stops there are along the way.
Right. And I think the roadmap breaks it down. I mean, where are we at and how do we get there? It's not just, a wish list of things that we want and here's our roadmap. It's here's why we need to get to these places and here's how we're going to do it. And I once said somebody says to me not long ago, they showed me a list of goals and said, this is our roadmap. And I said, no, that's a list of goals. They said, well, that's a roadmap. And I said, no, that's a list of goals. They said, well, no, this is what we use for our roadmap. I said, well, how are you going to get there?
Right.
Well, no, you've got to know step by step how you actually have to get there. And I think we are short-sighted sometimes just because it takes a lot of effort. And I think breaking it down, though, what do you think the responsibility from the executive leadership should be versus the and I want to go over all three, but versus the management and versus like the architect. So as far as the executive concerned, what do you think his responsibility or level of responsibility is for knowing these things?
Well, I think the executive needs to know not necessarily what the tool is, but it needs to know what the operational impact is. So the executive needs to set the strategy that and make it a strategy that's very clear to the IT group, as far as this is what I want to see and this is how I'm going to know when I see it. You know what I mean? So
right.
From the executive side, it can be, I want customer satisfaction to go up 150%, right?
Right.
So then going down to the management level of that, they need to take that and go, well, what kind of things can we do to increase customer satisfaction? Well, if you're in IT, one of the things you can do is improve quality control, improve uptime, improve first call resolution, reduce the recurrence of problems. Those are the 4 things that you can do to increase customer satisfaction. And not forget, the 5th thing is when you do have a problem that you can't fix, just not forgetting that the customer's there. And being able to continually make touch points with them. So I think that then the management defines, all right, well, that's what I want. What we need to do, we need to reduce our, increase our first call resolution. We need to reduce the recurrence of problems. We need to increase uptime. And then they evaluate the tools along with their technical team and select ServiceNow. And then the team lead, the architect, I think from my perspective, their job is to interpret this is what the capabilities are if you want to reduce downtime, then you need to implement change management. And
right, exactly.
And you need to implement the process of change management so that we can put it into the tool that controls change management.
Right, and the process needs to be good, but it needs to be based on the things that ServiceNow is based on, right? It can't be. It needs to have some basis in ITIL, right? It can't be just some random process you've made up that we're trying to fit into it, right? We want to try and keep as much out of the box, so you got to work with the architect to figure out what the capabilities are. I think.
It's possible to put it together with any other number of different processes rather than ITIL. But it's that old saying that everything's possible with time and money, and that time and money is what you don't have an abundance of.
Right.
And so, yes, the most practical, the best way to do it is to stay as close to out of the box, and that means learning some ITIL. And I think, and then that kind of helps push the responsibility, goes back up the chain, where the architect and the management agree on a software package, and this is what we're going to do. And then they talk about this is what, from a leadership perspective, has to go into place in order for this to even work. Well, then the executive leadership needs to then accept that and say, yes, we need to implement a change process. Yes, we need to implement incident response with SLAs and problem solving. And we're committed to doing that. We're going to enforce these processes being built before we expect the results out of the tool. And I think that chain going back at, driving this is what has to happen for the company down. And then as it goes down the chain, making the discovery of this is the product, this is the software, this is the tool, and the processes that can support that. And then once that goes back up for approval, getting the commitment to go ahead and say, yes, we're going to do this process. We're going to do these things.
Right. Now, Randy, I hate to cut us off here, but let's go ahead and take a quick break and listen to one of our sponsors real quick, and we'll be back in just a minute with some more wisdom from Randy. So hang on just a minute.
This podcast was made with Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to create and publish your podcast. It's free. Creation tools with it allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Helps you distribute your podcast. It's super simple to publish to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, any of the major ones. You can make money from your podcast. There's no minimum listenership, so they make it super easy to monetize. It's really everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So why don't you go out and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm and get started.
Okay, so we are back with ServiceSharp. Sorry for the quick break, but hey, we got to pay the bills. So we were talking about the leadership, commitment, vision, all the wonderful things that we need to have to be successful with ServiceNow. Randy, we were discussing one of the things that is near and dear to my heart is, what the responsibilities for leadership is. One of the things that I think that I would say I'm a little different in the fact that I think of the executive leadership, yes, they need to set the big picture directions and things to that effect. But it wouldn't hurt to know what they own, right? I think they need to know, here's what we've actually paid for. And I think that it's up to the management to go through and explain to them, what we've purchased, what we own. Now, as far as expanding out the next phase and the roadmap stuff, yeah, that's a management thing. But I think the management has a responsibility to know a little bit about the platform. And Randy, you're a perfect example. You got ServiceNow handed to you. You didn't know a lot about it. You went out and you went and spent time with me and other people to really get your hands around it and found out you loved it.
Well, yeah, I did that at the management level, though, not at the executive management level.
No.
So I do agree with you that they need to know what they've purchased, but I think that probably it's a little bit unreasonable probably to ask them to know very much about the software, because they've got all this other stuff running through, and really they need to know enough to know whether they trust you with the decision or not. You know what I mean? So
I think you're right. I think that the responsibility to do that kind of understanding the tool, is management. I agree there. I think you're right. The architect, on the other hand, is the guy that you have to be able to trust, right?
Right. Yeah, I think it's executives. I think it's an executive folly to second guess the experts that you hire to do things for you. Right. And I understand that it's hard to trust people to do things to your baby, your company, or whatever. But you've got to do that. I mean, that's, if you opened a company that could be run by one person, then it would be run by one person and it would make profits concurrent to that. But, if you make a company that's run by, 200, 300 people, well, then the profits go up, commensurate to that. But so does the responsibility to trust the people that you hire as well. Right. And
the one of the better examples is going to be Chick-fil-A, right?
Right. Yeah.
They've decided to push down authority all the way down to the guy standing behind the cash register. If something's messed up, they can turn around and say, your meal's free. And this is a lot of times a young kid that's in high school.
Right.
But because they've done that, they've been able to move faster to make their customers happy. And I think that's where we all want to be, right? We want to make sure our customers are taken care of, or we wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, I think I've been listening to a lot of John Maxwell and some others lately, and one of the things that he says in one of his books is that, he repeats it in several of them, but is that decisions should be made as close to where the action is as possible. And I think that that's true, and that's why it's so important for the executives to spend their time making sure they're setting the vision and the strategy in such a way that it's going down to everybody. If Chick-fil-A, if they didn't emphasize in their training that the customer, our philosophy is you do whatever it takes to make it right for the customer, then it doesn't do them any good to empower their people.
Right.
And so they've done two things. They've empowered their people and said, you can make it right. You do whatever it takes to make it right, and we'll back it up. And here's why: because the customer's experience is the most important thing to us. We want the customer to have a good experience over the profit for any one particular meal. And so since that's drilled into them, they regularly make those decisions. And, in private, they might get a review that says, yeah, you're probably giving away too many free sandwiches or something like that. But, all in all, we're glad that you're doing this, but maybe, think back a little bit on it, and maybe you can give a coupon for an ice cream cone or something that costs less. I don't know. But,
yeah,
and I don't know the inner workings of Chick-fil-A, so that's just a guess. But, it's a principle that's been used in other places as well. I think it was the Hilton hotels used to be famous for everybody being able to make it right for the customer from top to bottom. I'm not sure that that's still their current practice, because I recently had a not so pleasant experience dealing with customer service with them, and it was one of those things where I'm pretty sure that if an executive had been on the phone, their philosophy would have hopefully been, I want the customer that's been with us for 20 years or 25 years to stay with us for another 20 years worth of travel, right, rather than enforcing this one issue,
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a different story.
Yeah, we all have those experiences, and I think there's a lot of companies right now trying to move towards that kind of philosophy. I know that I was talking to a company that their new CIO or VP / acting CIO. I'm not even sure his title at this point, but he's trying to. He's actually not from IT. He's from the business side of things, and they're trying to align their business side with their IT side. So they brought in somebody from the business side, and his philosophy is we're going to reduce the number of the levels of management, and we're going to trust we're going to trust the people that are actually our experts that we're hiring.
Right.
And as working with that organization, what I'm seeing is that is the philosophy at the top, but it's not actually what's going on in middle management necessarily. So there's a cultural change that is trying to go on that is very difficult to pull off.
Right.
And, I hope they do it. I think it would be a wonderful thing, but the leadership has to stay diligent at making people do what they're wanting them to do.
Yeah. I mean, the bigger the ship, the harder it is to turn it, and so you got to kind of take that into account.
But it's great that they're thinking that way, right?
Yeah, it's great that they're thinking that way. Change is very difficult. You got to get buy-in, and you've got to re-get buy-in. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes I see with companies is that they have a kickoff hoorah meeting where everybody's super excited about a new product or a new development or a new way of doing things, and someone makes a really inspiring speech, which really gets kind of everybody riled up, but then it's not carried afterwards. It's just day to day goes back to being normal, and nothing's really changing at the middle management level. You're not really you're not really you're not really generating that feeling going forward. So the mistake is you can't just say we're going to change and then it's done. You got to keep being engaged. You got to keep casting that vision. You have to keep correcting the direction.
Right. And keep managing it, right? Keep
right.
Keep they say if you can't measure it, then you can't track it. So you got to find a way to measure that kind of thing. I don't know what the answer to that is, Randy. I mean, if you know any tricks, I'd love it. But you got to be able to somehow measure whether you're being successful in getting people to, move forward as far as trusting the architects and the people that are actually the experts that you've hired.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. It's different for every company. I think that, everything we've talked about tonight is, people are going to listen and they're going to go, yeah, everybody says that's common sense, vision, where do we want to go, roadmaps, getting commitment and everything like that. But the fact is, common sense, just because it may be common knowledge doesn't mean people are doing it.
Yeah, right.
and I think that, some of the problem comes from everybody being convinced that they are. We are making those changes. We are doing that. And maybe because there's not a metric that can disprove. Been reading a book called The Lean Startup. And one of the things that the guy talks about is vanity metrics. And the vanity metric is where you're basically looking at the wrong thing to determine whether you're successful or not,
Right.
Maybe you're looking at, in his case, he's talking about maybe you're looking at the number of people who visit your website when you should be looking at the number of people who buy your services. You know what I mean? And,
right.
If it were a popularity contest and that's how you made money, well, then website visits would be great. But how you make money is people signing up for the product or whatever. And, so I think that it's hard because we live in a results-oriented environment, and we have this, interestingly shifting, I think, American ideal of hard work. equals success, that's kind of shifting into the away from just hard work is my purpose to I need a purpose to do hard work, with the next generation.
Yeah.
And, people are, I think, not necessarily being able to jump on that change.
Yeah. It's hard.
Sometimes that's why you need an extra set of eyes,
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because you say that, and one of my favorite things, is I love reading about, different organizations and leadership and things to that effect. And one of the things they talk about is, as far as getting the most out of people, is giving them a why. That is important, though. I mean, don't as the executive, as the upper end leadership. I think even in the management, giving clear whys are extremely important. It's not just go do this. It's we're trying to, obviously not all companies are in the medical industry, but we're trying to save lives, or we're trying to grow the company 20% this year so we can, blank. Give a reason why, and it tends to motivate people quite a bit more.
Yeah.
But
that is correct. Yeah. There's an interesting quote that I read about getting your act together is the hardest thing that you can do, because, it's really hard to admit that you're the one that's been holding you back. And I think that's that's a downfall maybe of of leadership from time to time, is just, you got to be willing to let someone be brutal with you in order to really grow and move forward with things.
But I think part of that is having a good mentor, having somebody that will, executives need mentors. Executive needs coaching. They need, whether you're a team lead, an architect, a manager, an executive, we all need mentors. We all need coaches, people that will tell us what we need to do to improve and get better, because not everybody's going to be honest with you. And if you have a good mentor, or two or three, then you're going to be better off having that.
Yeah, I think that, I remember reading about, some of the best business leaders of all time have all talked about who their mentor was, or who the person that they patterned themselves after, or that they went to for advice or influence. And everybody has that, that pattern of needing some outside eyes from time to time, no matter who you are. And it doesn't have to be someone who's better at your particular industry than you. It just needs to be someone that you can trust, who will ask you honest questions and give you honest feedback, and help you hold you accountable to pushing forward in your journey.
Absolutely. So we kind of got off in a little bit of in more on the leadership side. I love it. On the ServiceNow side, so one of the things that we need to understand is commitment. We have to have commitment from everybody involved, from the executive leadership down. We don't have to have, as Randy said earlier, we don't have to have a ton of knowledge about ServiceNow on the executive side. They just have to give a good vision. They need to give a good direction. On the management side, I think it's important to understand that you have to know what the capabilities are. You don't necessarily have to be able to do the development, but you need to understand that it's possible to do the things. And you have to trust your team leader, your architect, the person that you hired that is your expert, to be able to give you the correct amount of information, and to really trust in them. Or if you don't trust them, find somebody else. Let them go. Yeah. Go get somebody else. I mean, it is not going to do anybody any good any other way.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, going back to the management, one of the important things is maybe not necessarily know the capabilities of ServiceNow, but know that you need to constantly be asking, what are the capabilities?
Yeah.
Anytime,
know where your gap is, right?
Right. Yeah. Anytime that, somebody comes up with a new, we need to do this, run it by your team, ask them, can we, before you do, and not just ServiceNow, but any software that you currently own, before you start looking at new software, take the step back to do the due diligence on the stuff you currently own.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'll be honest, I think leaders should go to knowledge. I think if you don't go to knowledge, you're missing something that you could really help you move your organization forward. And I think that's really important. Now, what do you think about that? You think management should go to knowledge?
I think that knowledge is a great place to get a lot of experience and to really have your eyes opened. I know that when I first became involved with ServiceNow, that it was critical for me to me and the person that I put in charge of the team to understand and to go to knowledge and to really jump in and do some learning. We had an expert that joined the team whenever the team was moved to the area, but I didn't have a context to know what the expert was saying. And so, I think it's important to go. I think that, let's be honest, if you've got ServiceNow in your environment, then your company's made a significant investment, because it's not cheap. You don't buy it at the dollar store, and so, I think it's important to take the time to get out there and to know it. If not knowledge, at least go to a snug meeting where you're at, or they have local, they have regional, not trade shows, but regional mini conferences. I don't even know what to call them, but I know that there's one or two that I've been to in Dallas before. That's not a knowledge, but still a lot of information.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So, I think this was a good conversation. We're going to have to cut it for this particular podcast. I think we could probably go on for another couple of days on this topic alone. But if you have any questions about this topic, or you want some guidance on this kind of stuff, email addresses, are on the podcast, and Randy's got all that stuff handled. So if you have any questions, just give us an email. Next podcast is going to be talking about empowerment. What does that mean? And then enforcement, who and why. So tune in, and we'll look forward to having a good conversation with you next week.
Thank you. And the email address is ServiceSharp at sharpstonegroup.com.
Yeah.
And we'll have our LinkedIn contact information out there as well. But send us information, send us questions and stuff like that, because, we love talking about this, but we also have, would love to dive into some of your technical questions as well that you may have. You may have something going on with an implementation that you just want to discuss, or something that you did that was extremely successful that you want to share, and we'd love to have you talk to us about it. So ServiceSharp at sharpstonegroup.com.
Love that stuff. Absolutely, guys. Thank you, Randy.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.